Across the known universe, there exists a simple truth that every species learns before they venture into the dark between stars. Humans are dangerous not because they're the strongest, fastest, or smartest. They're dangerous because they treat catastrophic injury like a minor inconvenience, mortal terror like a puzzle to solve, and impossible odds like a personal challenge. When the Kethari Dominion, apex predators who had conquered 17 star systems without losing a single battle, encountered their first human, they expected another easy victory. After all, what could one soft, pink creature do against warriors whose ancestors had hunted gods? They broke 17 of his bones. His response would become legend across the galaxy. Oh, that? This is the story of Marcus Chun, cargo hauler turned reluctant hero, and how a species that measured worth in survival discovered that some things are more dangerous than death itself. Hope, stubbornness, and the terrifying human ability to get back up when any reasonable creature would stay down. Because in a universe where might makes right, humanity's greatest weapon isn't their technology, their numbers, or their cunning. It's their absolute refusal to know when they're beaten. Marcus Chun had been hauling cargo through the Outer Rim for 12 years, and in that time he'd learned 3 important lessons. Never trust a Zephyrian trader smile. Always keep your fusion core at 60% or higher. And when something seems too good to be true in deep space, it usually involves either pirates or death. Sometimes both. The job posting on Kepler Station had triggered all his warning bells. Premium rates for a simple supply run to the Hadron Belt. No questions asked. Payment up front. The kind of offer that screamed trouble in 17 different languages. But Marcus's ship, the Defiant Spirit, needed new thruster assemblies, and his medical insurance had lapsed 3 months ago. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. The cargo manifest listed mining equipment and supplies bound for the asteroid mining operation on Hadron 7. Standard stuff. Too standard if Marcus was being honest. He'd run supplies to mining operations before, and they usually needed everything from air scrubbers to entertainment modules. This shipment was remarkably focused. Drilling equipment, explosives, and what the manifest vaguely described as specialized extraction tools. Marcus didn't ask questions. That was part of his reputation. Marcus Chun delivered cargo, not judgments. It had kept him alive and relatively prosperous in a business where curiosity often led to vacuum exposure. The Defiant Spirit was a modified Hercules-class freighter, built for endurance rather than speed. Marcus had bought her 15 years ago with his discharge pay from the Terran Colonial Marines. She wasn't pretty. Scarred hull, plating, mismatched thruster ports, and a bridge that looked like it had been assembled from spare part salvage from a dozen different ships. But she was reliable. More importantly, she was his. The ship's AI, which Marcus had named Athena mostly to annoy his more superstitious competitors, chimed softly as they cleared Kepler Station's traffic control zone. Course plotted for Hadron 7, Marcus. Jump window opens in 14 minutes. Any other traffic heading our way? Marcus asked, settling into the pilot's chair that had molded itself to his form over years of use. The synthetic leather was cracked and patched, but it was comfortable. Long-range sensors show nothing significant. 2 consortium patrol ships near the gas giant, but they're maintaining standard shipping lane surveillance. Nothing headed toward the asteroid belt. That was unusual. The Hadron Belt was a busy region, with dozens of mining operations extracting rare minerals from the dense asteroid field. Traffic was normally constant. Supply ships, or haulers, passenger transports carrying shift rotations. The emptiness felt wrong. Marcus pulled up the navigational charts on his secondary display. The Hadron Belt sat at the edge of consortium space, technically within their jurisdiction, but far enough from the core systems that patrol coverage was sporadic. It was the kind of place where things happened, and nobody asked too many questions afterward. Athena, run a deep scan on our cargo, Marcus said, though he knew it wouldn't reveal anything useful. The shipping containers were sealed with military-grade locks and lined with sensor-dampening materials. Whatever was inside, someone had paid considerable money to keep it secret. Scans inconclusive. The containers are shielded against both active and passive sensor sweeps. I'm detecting some electromagnetic signatures consistent with mining equipment, but I cannot verify the complete contents. Marcus nodded. He'd expected as much. What about our destination? Anything unusual about Hadron 7? Athena's response came after a pause that was just long enough to be concerning. Hadron 7 mining operation was established 18 months ago by a company called Cerberus Extraction, Limited Public Records. The operation appears to be isolated. Isolated how? No regular communication schedules with consortium authority. No register por el manifest. The last supply delivery was recorded 3 weeks ago. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. 3 weeks without resupply was pushing the limits for most mining operations, especially in the asteroid belt where everything from air to water had to be imported. Pull up everything you can find on Cerberus Extraction. The information was sparse and unsatisfying. Cerberus Extraction existed as a legal entity registered in the consortium's commercial database. But beyond that, the company was a ghost. No corporate headquarters, no public officers, no financial reports. The kind of shell company that existed solely to conduct business that other entities prefer to keep off their books. The jump alarm sounded, and Marcus pushed his concerns aside. He'd taken sketchy jobs before. As long as the payment cleared and nobody shot at him during delivery, he could live with moral ambiguity. The transit through jump space was routine. The Defiant Spirit was old enough to remember when jump drives required dedicated navigation computers and crew prayers for successful translation. Modern jump technology had reduced the process to a matter of mathematics and automated systems, but Marcus still felt the familiar twist in his stomach as the ship slipped between dimensions. They emerged from jump space 12 hours later at the edge of the Hadron Belt. Marcus immediately noticed what the traffic control reports had missed. The space around Hadron 7 wasn't empty. It was occupied. 3 ships hung in orbit around the asteroid mining operation. They were sleek, predatory vessels that Marcus didn't recognize, built along lines that suggested both advanced technology and hostile intent. The ships were roughly humanoid in overall configuration, with swept-forward wings and elongated hulls that reminded him uncomfortably of hunting animals poised to strike. Athena, identify those ships, Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral even as his hand moved to the weapons console. Configuration unknown. Architecture does not match any known consortium or human designs. Energy signatures suggest advanced propulsion and weapon systems. They are significant. Before Marcus could respond, his communication system activated without his permission. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing something that made his blood run cold. The creature on the screen stood roughly 8 feet tall, covered in what appeared to be natural armor plating that gleamed like polished obsidian. Its head was elongated and predatory, with multiple eyes arranged along what might have been a skull. When it opened its mouth to speak, Marcus counted 3 rows of teeth designed for tearing rather than grinding. Human vessel, the creature said in heavily accented but understandable consortium standard. You carry cargo designated for this location. You will transfer your shipment and submit to inspection. Marcus kept his expression neutral, even as his mind raced through options. The cargo hold was sealed, but he had no illusions about his ability to resist 3 unknown ships with superior technology. I'm making a legitimate delivery to the Cerberus mining operation. Who are you to demand? The creature made a sound that might have been laughter. The mining operation serves our purposes now. You will comply, or you will be destroyed. Your choice requires no deliberation. The communication channel closed before Marcus could respond. On his sensor display, the 3 ships began moving toward his position with the fluid precision of apex predators. Marcus had been in combat situations before during his military service, but those had involved clear rules of engagement, backup support, and at least some idea of what he was fighting. This felt different. These ships moved with a confidence that suggested they had never encountered serious resistance. Athena analyzed their approach vectors. Are they trying to disable us or destroy us? Their formation suggests capture rather than destruction. They are positioning to prevent escape while maintaining firing solutions on our critical systems. Marcus made a decision that went against every survival instinct he'd developed over 12 years of independent cargo hauling. Instead of powering down his systems and surrendering, he activated the Defiant Spirit's defensive measures and began plotting an escape vector deeper into the asteroid field. Marcus, Athena said with what almost sounded like concern, the probability of successful escape is statistically negligible. Yell, Marcus said, strapping himself into his acceleration harness. I've never been very good at statistics. The Defiant Spirit might have been old and patched together, but she had been built for hauling cargo through contested space during the Outer Rim conflicts. Her engines were oversized for her mass. Her hull was reinforced beyond standard specifications, and her electronic warfare suite had been upgraded with military surplus components that were technically illegal for civilian vessels. Marcus lit the engines at full burn and dove toward the densest concentration of asteroids, hoping that the alien ship's obvious technological superiority didn't extend to navigating chaotic gravitational fields at high velocity. The lead alien ship responded immediately, firing what appeared to be some form of energy weapon. The beam missed the Defiant Spirit's stern by less than 50 meters, close enough that Marcus could feel the ship's hull plating heat up from the near miss. That was a warning shot, he realized. They really did want him alive. The asteroid field was a navigation nightmare. Thousands of rocks ranging from pebbles to mountain-sized masses, all tumbling through space in complex orbits around Hadron 7. Most pilots would attempt to find a clear corridor through the field and follow established navigation routes. Marcus had spent 6 months during the war threading his ship through similar fields while carrying supplies to besieged marine outposts. He went straight through the middle. The Defiant Spirit twisted and rolled between asteroids, her hull scraping against rocks that would have crushed smaller vessels. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, making minute adjustments to thrust and trajectory that kept them ahead of collisions by margins that would have terrified most pilots. Behind them, the alien ships followed with disturbing ease. Whatever technology they possessed clearly included sensors and maneuvering capabilities that made navigating the asteroid field look effortless. They were gaining ground with each passing minute. Marcus needed an advantage, something that would even the odds, or at least buy him time to reach the edge of the system where he could attempt another jump to hyperspace. The Defiant Spirit's cargo might be the key. If the aliens wanted it badly enough to capture him alive, they might hesitate to fire if he threatened to destroy it. Athena, can you override the cargo bay's environmental systems? Yes, but I should point out that venting the cargo hold would constitute breach of contract, and can you do it or not? Yes, Marcus. Though I feel obligated to mention that destroying cargo worth several million credits to avoid capture seems financially counterproductive. Marcus was about to explain the concept of being too dead to spend money when the Defiant Spirit's proximity alarm screamed. One of the alien ships had somehow maneuvered above him while he was focused on the pursuit behind. Energy beams lanced down from multiple points, striking his ship's engine compartment with surgical precision. The Defiant Spirit shuddered as her main engines died. Emergency power kept life support and maneuvering thrusters online, but escape was no longer possible. Marcus found himself drifting between two house-sized asteroids, effectively trapped. The lead alien ship moved into position directly in front of him, close enough that he could see details of its hull construction. The metal looked organic, as if it had been grown rather than manufactured. Weapon ports along its flanks tracked his ship with mechanical precision. "Human," came the voice over the communication channel. "Your resistance was noted, but ultimately pointless. Prepare to be boarded." Marcus looked around his bridge, the cracked leather chair, the patched control panels, the pictures of Earth he'd stuck to one bulkhead years ago and never bothered to remove. The Defiant Spirit had been his home for more than a decade. The idea of alien creatures walking through her corridors made his jaw clench. "Athena, initiate lockdown procedures." Encrypt all navigation data and personal files. Lockdown initiated. Marcus, I should mention that based on their demonstrated capabilities, any security measures we implement are likely to be temporary. I know. Do it anyway. Marcus stood up from his pilot's chair and walked to a storage locker near the rear of the bridge. Inside, wrapped in an old Marine issue equipment bag, was something he'd hoped never to need again: his service pistol and combat armor. The armor was 15 years old and had seen better decades, but the ballistic plates were still intact and the power cells still held a charge. Marcus had maintained it out of habit rather than expectation. Now, as he strapped on the familiar weight of ceramic and Kevlar, he felt muscle memory taking over. He'd been Sergeant Marcus Chun, 3rd Battalion, Outer Rim Marines. He'd fought pirates in the Vega system, held defensive positions against consortium rebels on Titan VII, and led boarding actions against hostile vessels in the darkness between stars. That had been a long time ago, but some things you never forgot. The first indication that the aliens had boarded came from Athena's comm announcement. Hull breach detected in Cargo Bay 2. Multiple contacts moving through the ship. Marcus checked his sidearm and moved toward the bridge's rear exit. The corridor beyond led to the ship's central access way, which connected to all the major compartments. If the aliens were coming from the cargo bay, he'd meet them halfway. He didn't have to wait long. The first alien warrior Marcus encountered was even more imposing in person. 8 feet of armored muscle and predatory grace, moving through the defiant spirit's corridors with the confidence of a creature that had never known defeat. Its multiple eyes tracked him with unblinking intensity, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that made Marcus's teeth ache. Human, you will surrender your vessel's command codes and submit to interrogation. Marcus raised his pistol. Counteroffer. You get off my ship, and we pretend this never happened. The alien made that sound again. Definitely laughter, Marcus decided. Your weapon is primitive. Your physical capabilities are inferior. Your resistance serves no purpose. Yell, Marcus said, and fired 3-round center mass. The bullet struck the alien's armor plating and ricocheted harmlessly into the corridor walls. The creature didn't even stagger. It looked down at the small scorch marks on its chest, then back at Marcus with what he interpreted as amusement. Interesting, it said, and moved forward with liquid speed. Marcus had fought hand-to-hand before, but never against something that was both stronger and faster than human normal. The alien's first blow caught him across the chest and sent him flying backward into the bulkhead hard enough to leave a dent in the metal plating. He came up swinging anyway. The fight was brief and brutal. Marcus managed to land several solid hits, but his punches had about as much effect as his gunfire. The alien, on the other hand, seemed to be testing him rather than trying to kill him quickly. Each blow was measured, designed to incapacitate rather than destroy. When Marcus finally went down, it was because the alien had methodically broken enough of his bones to make further resistance impossible. He could feel his ribs grinding against each other with each breath. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, and something was definitely wrong with his right leg. The alien stood over him, head tilted in what might have been curiosity. 17 bones broken, it said, consulting some kind of handheld device. Internal injuries consistent with severe trauma. By all biological measures, you should be unconscious or dead. Marcus struggled to sit up against the corridor wall, tasting blood. Oh, that. The alien's multiple eyes widened slightly. Explain. Marcus managed what he hoped looked like a grin despite the pain shooting through his skull. That's just Tuesday for a human. You should see what we consider a bad day. The alien that had beaten Marcus unconscious called itself War Leader Thekvar, and over the next several hours, Marcus learned more about his captors than he'd ever wanted to know. The Kethari Dominion was exactly what it sounded like, a military empire that had spent the last 3 centuries conquering everything they encountered. Marcus found himself in what the Kethari considered a detention cell aboard their flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath. The cell was a cube roughly 10 feet on each side, with walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. A single opening provided access, sealed by some kind of energy barrier that hummed with contained violence. The most unsettling thing about his imprisonment wasn't the cell or the guards. It was how carefully they were treating him. His broken bones had been set and splinted with technology that was clearly advanced beyond human medical capabilities. Automated systems monitored his vital signs and adjusted his environment for optimal healing. They'd even provided food that was not only edible, but specifically formulated for human nutritional needs. They were keeping him alive and healthy for a reason, and Marcus was fairly certain he wouldn't like what that reason turned out to be. War leader Thekvar visited him regularly, apparently fascinated by human physiology and psychology. During these visits, Marcus learned that the Kethari measured species by their combat effectiveness and survival instincts. It was a simple philosophy. Strong species deserve to exist. Weak ones became resources or history lessons. Your species confuses our analysts, Thekvar said during one such visit, standing just outside the energy barrier with his arms crossed behind his back. Your physical capabilities are unremarkable. Your technology is adequate, but not exceptional. Your numerical advantage in this region of space is minimal. Marcus was sitting against the back wall of his cell, still healing from their initial encounter. His ribs had been properly set, but breathing still hurt. And yet here we are having a conversation instead of you turning me into fertilizer. Funny how that works. Indeed, 3 different species warned us about humans before we encountered you. The Veltar claimed you were persistently troublesome. The hegemony's records describe humans as irrationally aggressive. The consortium's own military assessments rate human forces as disproportionately effective. Marcus tried not to show his surprise at the mention of other alien species. The consortium had maintained that humanity was alone in the galaxy, at least as far as intelligent life was concerned. Either they'd been lying or their intelligence was worse than anyone had imagined. Maybe your analysts are asking the wrong questions, Marcus said. Thekvar's head tilted in that way that indicated curiosity. Explain. You're looking at us like we're just another species to categorize and file away. Bigger, smaller, stronger, weaker. But that's not how humans work. How do humans work? Marcus considered his answer carefully. He was walking a fine line between providing useful information and giving away strategic advantages. On the other hand, he was one human on a ship full of hostile aliens in the middle of nowhere. Strategic considerations seemed less important than survival. We adapt, Marcus said finally. Put a human in an environment that should kill them, and they'll figure out how to live there. Give them a problem that has no solution, and they'll invent one. Tell them something is impossible, and they'll do it anyway, just to prove you wrong. Thekvar was quiet for a long moment. Your cargo, he said eventually. What was its true nature? Marcus had been wondering when that question would come up. Mining equipment, according to the manifest. The manifest was fabricated. Your cargo consisted of weapons. Specifically, weapons designed to be effective against Kethari armor and energy shielding. That explained a lot about why the job had seemed too good to be true. Someone had been expecting the Kethari and had prepared accordingly. The question was whether Marcus had been an unwitting courier or deliberate bait. News to me, Marcus said, which was technically true. Perhaps. Your species has a reputation for compartmentalized knowledge in military operations. It is possible you were unaware of your cargo's true nature. Marcus kept his expression neutral, but internally he was reassessing everything about his situation. If the cargo had really been weapons designed specifically for fighting the Kethari that suggested human intelligence, services knew far more about alien threats than they were sharing with civilians. The weapons were crude, but effective, Thekvar continued. Kinetic projectiles designed to fragment upon impact with our armor. Electromagnetic pulse devices calibrated to our shielding frequencies. Explosives that would have caused significant damage to our ships. Sounds like someone was expecting trouble. Indeed. What we cannot understand is why a single cargo hauler was sent to deliver such valuable materials. A military convoy would have been more appropriate. Marcus almost laughed despite their circumstances. You really don't understand humans, do you? A military convoy would have been noticed, tracked, and probably intercepted. One independent cargo hauler with a reputation for not asking questions? That's just Tuesday in the shipping business. Thekvar's multiple eyes focused on him with laser intensity. You frequently reference this day, Tuesday. What is its significance? It's just Tuesday, an ordinary day. The kind of day when ordinary things happen and nobody pays much attention. You consider being broken and bloodied to be ordinary. Marcus thought about his answer for a moment. How could he explain to an alien warrior that humans had been breaking themselves against impossible odds for thousands of years? That every major human achievement had come from someone who refused to accept that something couldn't be done? War leader, Marcus said finally, how many species has your Dominion conquered? 47 species have submitted to Dominion authority. 12 others chose extinction rather than surrender. And how many fought back after they surrendered? Thekvar's silence was answer enough. That's the difference, Marcus continued. Other species see conquest as the end of the story. Humans see it as a temporary setback. You break our bones, we learn to fight with broken bones. You take our worlds, we figure out how to take them back. You destroy our ships, we build better ones. Impossible. No species can maintain resistance indefinitely against superior force. Marcus leaned forward despite the pain in his ribs. Want to bet? Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the ship's bridge. Thekvar listened to the rapid-fire alien language with growing concern before addressing Marcus directly. It appears your species is more prepared than we anticipated, he said. 3 human vessels have arrived at the edge of this system. They're demanding your immediate release. Marcus felt a surge of hope that he tried not to show. 3 ships against your fleet? Those are pretty bad odds. For them, yes. Our vessels are superior in every measurable way. Maybe, but you're thinking like a Kethari again. Humans don't fight fair when the odds are against them. We fight smart. Thekvar departed without another word, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that his rescue attempt was going to go very badly for someone. He just hoped it wouldn't be the humans. Over the next several hours, Marcus could feel the ship's status changing. Acceleration patterns suggested they were maneuvering for combat. Energy fluctuations in the lighting indicated weapons and defensive systems powering up. The Kethari were preparing for battle with the confidence of a species that had never lost. Marcus had served with enough different units during his military career to recognize the signs of overconfidence. The Kethari were better armed, better armored, and more experienced at space combat than the humans. They were also fighting an enemy they didn't understand. The first indication that the battle had begun came from the ship's sudden violent maneuver to starboard. Marcus was thrown against the side of his cell hard enough to rattle his teeth. Emergency lighting activated throughout the ship, casting everything in a blood-red glow. Through the energy barrier of his cell, Marcus could hear alarms and rapid communication in the Kethari language. Whatever was happening, it wasn't going according to their plan. War leader Thekvar returned to his cell area an hour later, and Marcus could immediately tell that something had changed. The alien warrior's armor was scorched and dented, and his movements suggested injury despite his species' advanced medical technology. Your ships, Thekvar said without preamble, they are not fighting as expected. Yeah? How are they fighting? They refuse to engage in direct combat. Instead, they employ unconventional tactics. Marcus grinned despite everything. Let me guess. Hit and run attacks. Ambush strikes from the asteroid field, targeting your sensors and communication arrays instead of your main weapons. Thekvar's multiple eyes widened. How could you know their tactical approach? Because that's how humans fight when we're outgunned. We don't try to go toe-to-toe with superior force. We make you fight our kind of war instead of yours. Their vessels are inferior. They should not be capable of evading our weapons. Inferior how? Smaller? Less armored? Those aren't bugs, war leader. Those are features. A small, fast ship can go places your dreadnoughts can't follow. It can hide in sensor shadows, use environmental hazards for cover, and disappear before you can bring your superior firepower to bear. Another violent maneuver threw Marcus against the opposite wall. When the ship stabilized, he could hear new alarms blaring throughout the vessel. "They have damaged our navigation sensors," Thekvar said, his voice carrying a note that Marcus interpreted as genuine concern for the first time. "That's just the beginning," Marcus told him. "Next they'll go after your long-range communications, cut you off from reinforcements and support. Then they'll start picking apart your escort ships one by one while you stumble around blind in an asteroid field. Impossible. We're the Kethari. We have conquered 47 species. And how many of those species had 300 years of human military history to learn from? How many had studied every single battle tactic that worked against superior numbers and firepower?" Marcus could see doubt creeping into Thekvar's posture. The Kethari had built their entire civilization around the concept of martial superiority. The idea that their technological and physical advantages could be neutralized by tactics and determination was fundamentally challenging to their worldview. "Your species is smaller and weaker than ours," Thekvar said, as if repeating a basic truth could make it more comforting. "Yeah, we are. We're also meaner, more stubborn, and way more creative when it comes to violence. You want to know the real difference between humans and every other species you've conquered? Thekvar weitet. They fought your war. We'll make you fight ours." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the deck plating, Marcus could feel the deep thrumming of the ship's main engines stuttering and irregularly. The human ships were apparently targeting the Sovereign's wrath directly now. "War leader," Marcus said carefully, "I've got a proposition for you. Speak. Let me talk to my people. I might be able to convince them to negotiate instead of continuing this fight." Thekvar studied him for a long moment. "What terms would you propose?" Marcus took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would determine whether this ended in mutual destruction or something resembling survival for both sides. "Simple. You release me and withdraw from the system. In exchange, I guarantee that humanity won't actively hunt down your ships or attempt to interfere with your operations in other regions. That is not acceptable. The Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. War leader, with all due respect, you might want to reconsider what inferior means. Right now, your flagship is being systematically dismantled by 3 ships that you claim shouldn't be able to touch you. Your escort vessels are either destroyed or damaged. Your navigation and communications are compromised." Another massive impact shook the ship. This time, the emergency lighting flickered and went out for several seconds before the backup system stabilized. "Those are the facts," Marcus continued. "Now you have to decide whether your pride is worth more than your ship and your crew." The negotiation, such as it was, took place in the Sovereign's Wrath Command Center while the battle raged around them. Marcus had been brought to the bridge under heavy guard, his hands secured behind his back with restraints that would have required industrial cutting tools to remove. The Kethari weren't taking any chances with their apparently fragile, but persistently troublesome prisoner. The command center was an impressive space, a cathedral of war built around the concept of absolute battlefield awareness. Multiple display screens showed tactical information from dozens of different sensors, all feeding into a central command station where war leader Thekvar coordinated his fleet's responses to the human attack. Marcus counted at least 30 Kethari warriors working at various stations, their movements precise and efficient despite the obvious stress of the situation. These weren't amateurs or conscripts. They were professional soldiers with centuries of experience in space combat. The fact that 3 human ships were systematically dismantling them should have been impossible. "Observe," Thekvar said, gesturing toward the main tactical display. "Your vessels refuse to engage in honorable combat." Marcus studied the screen, recognizing the tactical situation immediately. The 3 human ships. He could see from their configuration that they were modified Constellation-class destroyers, had split up, and were using the asteroid field's complex gravitational dynamics to achieve impossible maneuvers. They would appear from behind cover, launch a concentrated attack on a specific target, then disappear back into the maze of rocks before the Kethari could respond effectively. Honorable combat, Marcus repeated. Interesting concept. Define honorable. Direct engagement. Ship against ship. The superior force claims victory. And how's that working out for you? On the display, one of the human ships executed a maneuver that should have torn it apart, using a spinning asteroid's gravity well to whip around its surface and emerge from an unexpected vector. The attack that followed took out two of the Sovereign's Wrath's point defense arrays before the ship vanished again into the asteroid field shadows. They are cowards, one of the Kethari Bridge officers snarled in heavily accented standard. They refused to face us directly. Marcus turned to study the officer. Like all Kethari, he was imposing 8 feet of armored muscle and predatory intensity. His armor bore markings that suggested significant combat experience. This was a warrior who had probably never encountered an enemy that wouldn't stand and fight. You really think they're cowards? Marcus asked. What else would you call such tactics? Smart. You outgun them 3-1. Your ships are bigger, better armored, and more heavily armed. A direct engagement would be suicide. Exactly. They should surrender or die with honor. Marcus laughed, a sound that apparently disturbed several of the Kethari Bridge crew. You know what human honor looks like? It looks like winning. It looks like going home alive to your family. It looks like making sure your people survive and prosper. Honor requires courage in battle, Thekvar said. War leader, those 3 ship commanders are showing more courage than you realize. They're taking on an enemy they know is superior to them in every way that matters for conventional combat. But instead of giving up or dying gloriously, they're finding a way to win anyway. On the tactical display, the human ships had regrouped near a cluster of particularly large asteroids. Their formation suggested they were preparing for something more aggressive than their previous hit-and-run attacks. What are they doing? Thekvar demanded. Marcus studied the screen for a moment, reading the tactical situation with 15 years of military experience. If I had to guess, they've finished their reconnaissance. Now, they're going to end this. Impossible. We still possess superior firepower. Sure, but firepower doesn't matter if you can't bring it to bear on target. Those asteroids they're hiding behind, I'm betting they've been doing more than just using them for cover. As if to confirm his words, the asteroids around the human ships suddenly began moving, not drifting or rotating, moving with purpose and direction toward the Kethari fleet. Mining charges, Marcus realized. They've been attaching mining charges to asteroids and turning them into guided missiles. The improvised asteroid bombs approached the Kethari formation with surprising speed and accuracy. The alien ships attempted to destroy them with defensive fire, but the rocks absorbed tremendous damage while continuing their approach. When they finally detonated, the results were catastrophic. The Sovereign's Wrath shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Display screens flickered and went dark as shock waves from multiple explosions overwhelmed the ship's inertial dampeners. Emergency klaxons filled the air with their urgent wailing. Status report. Thikbarvart. 2 escort vessels destroyed. Came to reply from multiple stations. 3rd escort heavily damaged and requesting assistance. Our own defensive systems are compromised in sectors 4 through 7. Marcus watched the tactical display with professional appreciation. The human commanders had turned the asteroid field from an obstacle into a weapon. Instead of fighting the Kethari fleet ship to ship, they'd used the environment itself as their primary armament. This is why humans are dangerous, Marcus said to Thekvar. We don't play by anyone else's rules. We make up our own. Your tactics are innovative, Thekvar admitted grudgingly, but they cannot overcome our numerical superiority indefinitely. War leader, what numerical superiority? You brought 3 ships to this system. Humans brought 3 ships to this system. The only difference is that your ships are burning wrecks, and ours are still fighting. Before Thekvar could respond, the bridge's communication system activated. A human voice filled the command center, speaking in clear, unaccented standard. Kethari vessel, This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran naval ship Indomitable. You have one of our people. We want him back. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Chun wasn't exactly a common surname, but the coincidence seemed unlikely. Commander Chun, Thekvar replied, we are prepared to negotiate terms for— I wasn't asking for negotiations, the voice interrupted. I was explaining why we're about to destroy your ship. Unless you'd prefer to avoid that outcome. Marcus grinned despite everything. Definitely military family. What terms do you propose? Thekvar asked. Release Marcus Chun immediately. Withdraw all Kethari forces from the system. Provide full technical specifications for your weapons and defensive systems as compensation for the illegal attack on a civilian vessel. Several of the Kethari officers made sounds that Marcus interpreted as outrage. Thekvar himself seemed taken aback by the audacity of the demands. These terms are unacceptable, Thekvar said. Then, you've chosen destruction. We'll begin systematically dismantling your ship in 60 seconds. The communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. War leader, one of the officers said, we cannot surrender to an inferior species. The Dominion would never accept such humiliation. Thekvar studied the tactical display, where the 3 human ships had taken up positions that suggested they were prepared to resume their attack. His fleet was reduced to his flagship and one badly damaged escort. Against an enemy that had demonstrated they could turn the battlefield itself into a weapon, the outcome of continued fighting seemed inevitable. Marcus Chun, Thekvar said finally, is the voice we heard related to you? Commander Sarah Chun is my sister, Marcus confirmed. She's also one of the finest tactical officers in the Terran Navy and absolutely ruthless when it comes to protecting family. You speak as if her capabilities exceed our own. War leader, she just reduced your fleet to scrap metal using mining charges and gravitational mechanics. What do you think she can do with actual military weapons? As if summoned by his words, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. 4 additional human ships had just translated into the system, emerging from jump space in a formation that spoke of military precision and hostile intent. Reinforcements, Marcus observed. Sarah never did like to take chances. The newcomers were clearly military vessels, sleek, purpose-built warships that made the modified destroyers look like civilian craft by comparison. They moved toward the battle zone with the confidence of apex predators that had suddenly found themselves facing wounded prey. This is impossible, the Kethari tactical officer said. Our intelligence indicated no significant human military presence in this region. Your intelligence was incomplete, Marcus said. Humans have been preparing for this kind of contact for longer than you realize. The truth was that Marcus had no idea how Sarah and the Navy had found him so quickly, but he wasn't about to share that uncertainty with his captors. The important thing was that help had arrived, and the tactical situation had shifted decisively in humanity's favor. War leader, Marcus said carefully, I want to make something clear. Those ships out there, they represent maybe 1% of human military capability in this region. And this region represents maybe 10% of human space. You've just encountered the border patrol, not the fleet. Thekvar studied the tactical display with the expression of someone who was rapidly reassessing everything they thought they knew about the universe. How many ships does your species possess? He asked. Marcus pretended to consider the question. Honestly, I don't think anyone knows the exact number. Between the regular Navy, the Colonial Defense Forces, the Merchant Marine, and all the private security companies, maybe 50,000? 60. The number was probably an exaggeration, but not by as much as the Kethari might hope. Humanity had spent 3 centuries expanding across dozens of star systems, and every colony needed ships for defense and commerce. What looked like a scattered civilian shipping network could be transformed into a formidable military force with surprising speed. The Dominion controls 700 ships, Thekvar said, as if the number provided some measure of comfort. 700 ships across how many star systems? How many species under your control? How many garrison duties and patrol routes? Marcus shook his head. War leader, you're spread thin, and you know it. Humans control maybe 40 systems, but they're all human systems. Every ship, every base, every resource focused on the same goal, which is survival. And humans are really, really good at surviving. The communications system activated again. This time, the voice was different, older, with the gravelly authority of someone who had spent decades in command positions. Kethari vessel. This is Admiral Martinez aboard the TNS Resolution. You have 30 seconds to release our personnel and begin withdrawal from this system. Thekvar looked around his bridge at officers who were clearly out of their depth. The Kethari were warriors, but they were also pragmatists. When faced with impossible odds, even honor had its limits. Admiral Martinez, Thekvar said, "We will release your personnel. However, withdrawal from this system requires consultation with higher authority." Negative. You have 10 minutes to be underway, or we'll assume you've chosen continued hostilities. Marcus could see the calculations running behind Thekvar's multiple eyes. The Kethari had encountered something they'd never faced before, an enemy that was both technologically competent and absolutely ruthless in their approach to warfare. The kind of enemy that turned mining equipment into weapons and refused to fight fair when the odds were against them. "Very well," Thekvar said finally. "We will comply with your terms." The bridge fell silent except for the various alarms and status reports. For the Kethari, this was more than a tactical retreat. It was the first time in their history that they had been forced to surrender by what they considered an inferior species. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. He was going home, and the Kethari had just learned an important lesson about underestimating humanity. But as he looked around the alien bridge and saw the expressions of the Kethari warriors, he realized that this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. War leader Thekvar had called humans confusing, troublesome, and irrationally aggressive. After today, Marcus suspected the Kethari would have much stronger words for his species, and that was going to create problems that went far beyond one cargo hauler and his sister's rescue operation. The prisoner transfer took place in the shadow of Hadron 7, with both fleets maintaining weapons locks on each other while trying to pretend this was a civilized exchange. Marcus found himself in the unusual position of being the most relaxed person in two separate alien war zones, probably because he was the only one present who had confidence this wouldn't end in mutual annihilation. The Kethari had provided him with a pressure suit for the transfer, though they'd made it clear this was a practical necessity rather than any concern for his well-being. The suit was obviously designed for their physiology, leaving Marcus swimming in excess material, while the helmet's multiple eye ports gave him a distinctly insect-like appearance. "You look ridiculous," Commander Sarah Chan told him over the comm system as he maneuvered through the docking tube, connecting the Sovereign's Wrath to her destroyer, the Indomitable. "Thanks, sis. Great to see you too." Sarah was waiting for him in the Indomitable's docking bay, still wearing her command armor and looking exactly like what she was, a career naval officer who had spent the last 15 years turning herself into a weapon of human policy. She was shorter than Marcus, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The same stubborn jawline, the same tendency to meet problems head-on, the same absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible. "Medical says you've got 17 fractures and enough internal damage to kill a normal person," Sarah said as soon as Marcus had cleared the airlock. "Kethari medical technology is pretty impressive. I feel almost human again. That's what I'm worried about." Almost human used to be your normal state, even before aliens started using you as a stress test. Marcus grinned despite everything. Sarah had been lecturing him about taking unnecessary risks since they were children on the agricultural colony where they'd grown up. Some things never changed, even across interstellar distances and alien first contact scenarios. "How did you find me so fast?" Marcus asked as Sarah led him through the ship's corridors toward the medical bay. "We've been tracking Kethari movements for 3 months. When they showed up in force at Hadron 7, we knew something significant was happening. When our long-range sensors detected your ship signature, We put two and two together. You've been tracking them for 3 months? How long has the government known about hostile aliens? Sarah's expression went carefully neutral. That's above your clearance level. Marcus, I'm pretty sure getting beaten up by aliens gives me some kind of automatic clearance upgrade. That's not how classification works. Marcus stopped walking, forcing Sarah to turn and face him. Sis, I just spent several days as a prisoner of war with a species that has conquered 47 other civilizations. I think I've earned the right to know what's going on. Sarah studied his face for a long moment, clearly weighing operational security against family loyalty. The short version? First contact happened 6 months ago. A Kethari scout ship stumbled across one of our deep space monitoring stations. They destroyed it, but not before we got a complete sensor reading on their technology. And the long version? The long version is classified. But I can tell you that what happened here today was basically a field test of our anti-Kethari tactics. Marcus felt his stomach drop. I was bait. You were an opportunity. When we realized they'd captured a civilian vessel, it gave us a chance to see how they respond to human military doctrine under combat conditions. Jesus, Sarah, you could have got me killed. Marcus, we're talking about an alien empire that has spent 3 centuries conquering everything they encounter. They were going to come for us eventually anyway. The question was whether we'd be ready for them. They resumed walking toward the medical bay, but Marcus's mind was racing through the implications of what Sarah had told him. If humanity had known about the Kethari for 6 months, that meant the weapons in his cargo hold hadn't been a coincidence. Someone had deliberately set up a scenario where the aliens would encounter human military capability under controlled conditions. The mining operation on Hadron 7, Marcus said. That was yours too. Joint operation between naval intelligence and colonial defense. We needed a plausible reason for valuable cargo to be in this system. And the weapons in my cargo hold? Prototypes, designed specifically to counter Kethari technology based on the sensor readings from the destroyed monitoring station. Marcus shook his head. You used me to deliver prototype weapons to a fake mining operation so you could test them against hostile aliens. And you didn't think to mention any of this. Marcus, if you'd known what was really happening, would you have taken a job? Of course not. I'm not suicidal. Exactly. We needed a courier who would behave naturally under scrutiny. Someone with a reputation for not asking questions and a history of taking sketchy jobs. Someone expendable. Sarah stopped again and turned to face him directly. Someone I trusted to survive whatever happened. Marcus, there are maybe a dozen people in the galaxy I'd trust to handle that kind of situation and come out alive. You're one of them. Because I'm too stubborn to die? Because you're too stubborn to stay beaten? There's a difference. They'd reached the medical bay, but Marcus wasn't quite ready to let the conversation end. Sarah, what happens now? The Kethari know about us. They know we can fight back. Now we find out whether they're smart enough to avoid a war they can't win, or stupid enough to keep pushing. And if they keep pushing? Sarah's expression went cold in a way that reminded Marcus why his sister had earned her command rank at an unusually young age. Then, they'll learn what happens when you pick a fight with a species that spent its entire evolutionary history turning everything into weapons. The medical examination was routine, but thorough. The ship's chief medical officer, a competent-looking woman with lieutenant commander's stripes and the kind of no-nonsense manner that Marcus associated with military doctors, confirmed that the Kethari medical treatment had been effective but conservative. They stabilized your injuries and prevented any long-term damage, but they didn't optimize your healing, she explained while reviewing his scans. Probably didn't want to give away too much information about their medical capabilities. Makes sense. How long until I'm fully functional? With human treatment protocols? Maybe 2 weeks. The Kethari approach would have had you laid up for a month or more. Marcus nodded, filing away another data point about the differences between human and alien approaches to problem solving. The Kethari were thorough and effective, but they were also conservative. Humans, by contrast, were willing to accept higher risks in exchange for better outcomes. After the medical exam, Sarah took him to her quarters for a private conversation. The space was small, but efficiently designed, with the kind of personal touches that marked it as someone's actual home rather than just a birth assignment. Pictures of their parents' farm, a few books that had somehow survived the transition to digital formats, and a small collection of smooth stones from various worlds Sarah had visited during her career. "Okay," Sarah said, settling into her desk chair while Marcus took the room's only other seat. "Now, for the classified briefing you're not supposed to be getting." Marcus waited. The Kethari Dominion controls approximately 300 star systems spread across 7 spiral arms of the galaxy. They've been expanding for roughly 3 centuries at a rate of about 2 systems per year. Their military doctrine is based on technological superiority and overwhelming force. That matches what War Leader Thekvar told me. War Leader Thekvar was remarkably forthcoming for someone from a warrior culture. That's actually encouraging from a diplomatic perspective. Why? It suggests they're capable of rational assessment even when faced with unexpected situations. Species that can adapt their thinking are species we can potentially negotiate with. Marcus thought about his conversations with Thekvar and tried to reconcile them with Sarah's analysis. "I'm not sure rational is the right word. They seemed more confused than anything else." "Explain." "Their entire worldview is based on the idea that superior force leads to superior outcomes. When they encountered human tactics that ignored conventional measures of force, they didn't know how to process it." Sarah leaned forward her chair. "What was their reaction to human casualties?" "Human casualties? There weren't any human casualties." "Exactly. How did they respond to that fact?" Marcus considered the question. "They seemed surprised that we could be effective without significant losses. Like the idea of winning a battle without paying a heavy price was foreign to them. That's consistent with their known military history. The Kethari measure success by the casualties they're willing to accept, not the casualties they're able to avoid. That's insane. That's alien. Marcus, we're dealing with a species that evolved as apex predators on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Their concept of honor is tied to their willingness to face death directly. The idea of winning through cleverness rather than courage is literally incomprehensible to them." Marcus stood up and walked to the small viewport that looked out onto the asteroid field where the battle had taken place. In the distance, he could see the Kethari fleet beginning its withdrawal. The Sovereign's Wrath was limping away under escort, its hull scarred by impacts and energy burns. "Sarah, what if they decide we're too dangerous to leave alone? Then we'll deal with that problem when it arises." "But, Marcus, I don't think that's what's going to happen." "Why not?" "Because today they learned something important about humans. We don't fight to prove how tough we are. We fight to win. And that makes us more dangerous than anything they've encountered before, but it also makes us more predictable." "Predictable how?" Sarah joined him at the viewport, looking out at the retreating alien ships. "We're not going to hunt them down and destroy them just because we can. We're not going to demand tribute or submission just because we won. We're going to go back to our business and leave them alone unless they force us to do otherwise. And that makes us predictable. It makes us negotiable. The Kethari understand strength, even if they don't understand our methods. They can work with an enemy that defeats them in battle and then offers reasonable terms." Marcus hoped his sister was right, but something about his conversations with Thekvar suggested the situation was more complicated than simple military defeat. The Kethari had been genuinely confused by human behavior, not just surprised by human tactics. "There's something else," Marcus said. Thekvar mentioned that other species warned them about humans. The Veltar, the hegemony, something called the Consortium's military assessments. Sarah's expression sharpened. "He mentioned other species by name?" "Yeah, and it sounded like they all had previous contact with humans." "That's problematic." "Why?" "Because it suggests the galaxy is a lot more crowded than we thought. And if multiple species have had contact with humans, that means our expansion has been noticed by civilizations we don't even know exist." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's life support systems. "How many other species are out there?" "We don't know. But if the Kethari have conquered 47 species, and They're just one empire among many. Sarah shrugged. The galaxy might be full of civilizations we haven't encountered yet. The communication system in Sarah's quarters chimed softly. Commander Chun, we're receiving a transmission from the Kethari flagship. War Leader Thekvar is requesting permission to speak with Marcus Chun before they complete their withdrawal. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other. That's unusual, Sarah said. Permission granted. Marcus told the communication system. Put him through. Thekvar's image appeared on the small screen mounted on Sarah's desk. The alien warrior looked different somehow. Less confident, more thoughtful. Marcus Chun, Thekvar said, I wanted to speak with you before our departure. Go ahead, war leader. Your sister's tactics were instructive. We had not encountered an enemy that refused to engage according to established conventions. Sarah's always been creative. Indeed. However, I must ask you a question that bears on future relations between our species. What question? Thekvar paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. Are all humans like you? Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly. What do you mean? Do all humans refuse to remain defeated? Do all humans treat significant injury as a minor inconvenience? Do all humans respond to overwhelming odds with stubborn determination rather than rational surrender? Marcus considered the question seriously. War leader, I'm pretty average for a human. If anything, I'm less stubborn than most. Thekvar's multiple eyes widened slightly. I see. This information will be relevant to the Dominion's strategic planning. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Sarah alone with the implications of what had just been said. I think, Sarah said slowly, we may have just prevented a war. How do you figure? Because now they know what they'd be getting into if they decided to fight us. And based on Thekvar's reaction, I don't think they want any part of species-wide conflict with humans. Marcus hoped she was right. Because if the Kethari decided that humans were too dangerous to coexist with, the galaxy was about to become a much more violent place. 6 months after the incident at Hadron 7, Marcus found himself in the last place he'd expected to be, sitting in a conference room aboard the Terran diplomatic vessel Harmony, preparing to negotiate humanity's first formal treaty with an alien empire. The irony wasn't lost on him that a cargo hauler who'd stumbled into first contact was now considered an expert on Kethari psychology. The conference room was designed to accommodate multiple species with adjustable seating, atmospheric controls, and communication systems that could handle a variety of physiological requirements. The human delegation occupied one side of a large oval table, while their Kethari counterparts had arranged themselves according to what Marcus had learned was a complex hierarchy based on combat experience and political authority. War Leader Thekvar was present as the senior Kethari representative, but he was accompanied by individuals whose titles suggested they held authority over matters beyond simple military conquest. The presence of someone called a speaker for the Dominion indicated that this negotiation was being taken seriously at the highest levels of Kethari government. The question before us, said Ambassador Patricia Valdez, the senior human diplomat, is whether our species can coexist without constant conflict. The events at Hadron 7 demonstrated that such conflict would be costly for both sides. Speaker Korthan A.K., the senior Kethari representative, made a sound that Marcus had learned indicated thoughtful consideration rather than aggression. The Dominion acknowledges that humans possess military capabilities that were unexpected. However, coexistence requires more than mutual military respect. What else would it require? Ambassador Valdez asked. Understanding. The Dominion has governed 47 species for 3 centuries through a simple principle. Strong species rule, weak species serve. Humans appear to be strong, but you do not behave as strong species should behave. Marcus glanced at Sarah, who was attending as the military advisor to the human delegation. Her expression suggested she was thinking the same thing he was. This was going to be complicated. How should strong species behave? Ambassador Valdez asked carefully. They should expand their territory through conquest. They should demand tribute from weaker neighbors. They should establish clear hierarchies based on military capability. And humans don't do these things. Humans defeated our fleet and then left. You made no territorial demands. You claimed no tribute. You established no hierarchy. This behavior is incomprehensible to us. Ambassador Valdez leaned forward slightly. Speaker Korthik K. Perhaps our species has different definitions of strength. Explain. Humans measure strength by our ability to protect what matters to us. Our families, our communities, our way of life. We don't expand through conquest because we don't need to. We have enough resources and territory to meet our needs. This is impossible. All species require more resources as they grow. Not if you're efficient about using what you have. Human technology focuses on maximizing the utility of available resources rather than simply acquiring more resources. Speaker Korthanake exchanged what Marcus interpreted as meaningful looks with the other Kethari representatives. Their body language suggested this concept was as alien to them as their warrior culture was to humans. You are saying, Speaker Korthake said slowly, that humans choose not to expand, not that you are unable to expand. That's correct. And if circumstances require expansion, Ambassador Valdez smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. Then we'd expand, but we'd prefer to do it through negotiation rather than conquest. War leader Thekvar spoke for the first time since the session had begun. Negotiation implies mutual benefit. What could humans offer the Dominion that would be worth more than conquered territory? It was Marcus's turn to contribute to the conversation. He'd been brought to these negotiations specifically because of his first-hand experience with Kethari thinking, and this seemed like the moment to use that knowledge. War leader Marcus said, during our conversations aboard the Sovereign's Wrath, you mentioned that the Dominion has been expanding at a rate of about 2 systems per year. Correct. And that expansion requires constant military operations to maintain control over conquered species. Also correct. What if I told you that humans could help you govern your existing territory more efficiently? Reduce the need for constant military oversight while increasing the productivity of conquered worlds. The Kethari delegation went very still. Marcus could see them processing the implications of his suggestion. Explain this proposal, Speaker Korthe said carefully. Humans have 3 centuries of experience in managing diverse populations across multiple star systems. We've learned that willing cooperation is more efficient than forced compliance. Willing cooperation from conquered species is impossible. Not conquered, integrated. There's a difference. Sarah leaned forward to support Marcus's point. Speaker Korthanake, our intelligence suggests that the Dominion spends roughly 30% of its military capacity on garrison duties and rebellion suppression. Is that accurate? The percentage is significant, Speaker Korthanake admitted. Human colonial administration requires less than 5% of our military forces for internal security. The difference is an approach. What approach do humans use? Ambassador Valdez took over the explanation. We offer membership rather than submission. Species that join the human community retain their cultural identity and local governance while gaining access to human technology, trade networks, and defensive capabilities. And in exchange, they contribute to the common defense and follow basic laws that apply to all member species. No tribute, no forced labor, no cultural suppression. War leader Thekvar made that sound Marcus had learned indicated skepticism. This approach would not work with Kethari subjects. They were conquered through superior force and understand only superior force. Maybe, Marcus said, or maybe they've never been offered an alternative to rebellion or submission. The human delegation spent the next several hours outlining their proposal in detail. Essentially, they were offering to help the Kethari transition from a conquest-based empire to a federation-based alliance. Human advisors would work with Kethari administrators to implement governance systems that relied on cooperation rather than coercion. In exchange, humanity would gain access to Kethari territory for trade and exploration, while both species would share military intelligence about other potential threats in the galaxy. The proposal was audacious in its scope and implications. If successful, It would fundamentally change the balance of power in this region of the galaxy. If it failed, it could lead to the kind of multi-species war that would devastate entire systems. This proposal requires consideration by the full Dominion Council. Speaker Corthe said finally. Such changes to our governance cannot be decided by a single delegation. We understand, Ambassador Valdez replied. Take whatever time you need. But I should mention that our offer comes with one non-negotiable condition, which is no more expansion through conquest while these negotiations continue. If the Dominion attacks another species during our discussions, we'll consider that a rejection of our proposal and respond accordingly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The Kethari delegation exchanged looks that suggested internal communication on a level that didn't require spoken words. You would go to war to protect species you have never met. War leader Thekvar asked. We'd go to war to prevent unnecessary suffering, Sarah answered. That's what strong species do. They protect those who can't protect themselves, even at the cost of your own casualties. War leader, my brother spent several days as your prisoner and came out of it convinced that the Kethari could be reasoned with. That suggests to us that you're not inherently evil, just operating according to a different understanding of how the galaxy works. Marcus cleared his throat. If I may add something here, War Leader Thekvar, during our conversations, you seemed genuinely curious about human behavior rather than simply dismissive of it. That curiosity suggests your people are capable of learning and adapting. And if we adapt, what then? What place do warriors have in this cooperative galaxy you envision? It was Sarah who answered. The same place they've always had, protecting the things that matter. The difference is that instead of fighting each other for resources that already exist, we'd be working together to create new resources and defend against threats that come from outside our mutual territory. What threats? Speaker Korthanake asked. Ambassador Valdez exchanged glances with the other human representatives. During the initial contact incident, War Leader Thekvar mentioned that other species had warned the Dominion about humans. That suggests there are civilizations in this galaxy that we haven't encountered yet. Many civilizations, Speaker Korthanake confirmed. Some friendly, some hostile, some simply alien beyond easy categorization. Then, we have something in common. A need to be prepared for the unknown. Humans and Kethari working together would be more capable of handling unexpected threats than either species working alone. The negotiations continued for 3 more days, with both sides working through the practical details of what galactic cooperation might look like. The challenges were enormous. Different legal systems, different approaches to conflict resolution, different concepts of individual rights and collective responsibility. But gradually, Marcus began to see the outline of something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary alliance between species that had initially met as enemies. The Kethari would maintain their warrior culture and military traditions while learning to apply those skills toward protection rather than conquest. Humans would share their administrative and technological expertise while gaining access to Kethari knowledge about the broader galactic community. On the final day of negotiations, War Leader Thekvar approached Marcus privately during a break in the formal sessions. Marcus Chun, the alien warrior, said, I have a question that is not related to official negotiations. Go ahead. When we first met, you claimed that 17 broken bones was ordinary for a human. Was that accurate? Marcus considered the question carefully. Not literally. Most humans go their entire lives without breaking 17 bones. But the attitude behind it? Yeah, that's pretty standard. The attitude, the refusal to stay down when something knocks you over. The insistence on getting back up and trying again even when the odds are impossible. And this attitude is common among your species? War Leader, it's what made us human. We've been getting knocked down and getting back up for thousands of years. It's how we survived ice ages, plagues, wars, environmental disasters, and our own stupidity. Thekvar was quiet for a long moment. The Dominion Council will approve this alliance, he said finally. You sound pretty certain about that. I am certain, because the alternative is eventual conflict with a species that refuses to stay defeated. The Kethari are warriors, but we are not fools. Marcus smiled. War leader, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I do not understand that reference. It's from an old human movie. I'll show it to you sometime. I think you'll appreciate the ending. The formal treaty was signed 3 weeks later, establishing the Human Kethari Alliance as the first interspecies federation in recorded galactic history. The document was more than a peace treaty. It was a blueprint for how different species could work together while maintaining their distinct cultural identities. Marcus returned to cargo hauling, but now his runs included Kethari territory and mixed crews that included warriors learning human logistics practices. The Defiant Spirit had been repaired and upgraded with Kethari defensive technology, making her one of the most capable civilian vessels in human space. More importantly, the Alliance had opened up possibilities that neither species had imagined. Kethari exploration fleets, now operating under cooperation mandates rather than conquest directives, were making contact with civilizations that had previously been too dangerous to approach. Human diplomatic corps were establishing trade relationships with species that had never trusted warlike visitors. The galaxy was changing, and for the first time in centuries, it was changing for the better. But Marcus knew that the real test would come when they encountered something that couldn't be negotiated with, reasoned with, or intimidated. When that happened, the galaxy would discover what humans and Kethari could accomplish when they worked together. He was looking forward to finding out. 6 months after the treaty signing, Marcus received a message that made him smile. War leader Thekvar had requested assignment as a liaison officer aboard a human exploration vessel. His official reason was to study human operational procedures. His unofficial reason, according to the message, was curiosity about what other impossible things humans might accomplish when nobody was paying attention. Marcus figured that was as good a foundation for galactic peace as anyone had ever managed to achieve. After all, the best alliances were built on mutual respect, shared goals, and the kind of stubborn determination that refused to accept that anything